Welcome to this week's episode of the And Both podcast. My guest is Jenny Armstrong. She is an elected state rep in Alaska. She is the founder of Wild Awake and Delve, both companies. And she is one of those people that really embodies the if you can, then you should, in terms of if you can help people, if you can help solve a problem, if you can get involved and make an impact and you have that capacity to do that, then do it. And it's kind of, I think, the best way to think about the word should, because a lot of times when we think about should, it's a feel like you have to just for whatever pressure on the outside. And Jenny is the embodiment of wanting to do great things and focusing on the goal and focusing on helping others reach their goals, that I think really helps to move the needle forward for founders and move the needle forward for business and motherhood. And so I was so thrilled to be able to speak with her. She was up in Alaska, so it was a really fun scheduling situation, being literally on the opposite sides of the country from each other. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. As in her roles, with Wild Awake, she supports ambitious women who better the world through courses, coaching, and community centered on increasing visibility with a new brand and website, laying a strong operational foundation in your business and leveling up as a leader. And then with Delve, it's a full-service creative agency that launches social good initiatives and delivers killer creative coupled with strategic issue area expertise for nonprofits. Her work as a state rep has focused on paid family leave, LGBTQ plus equality, and mental health. And her goal is to see as many women as possible in positions of power or running their own show, supports you at every step of your entrepreneurial and leadership journey so that you can be in the driver's seat of building your legacy and making the biggest impact possible. She is phenomenally kind and unbelievably giving of her time and her space, while also acknowledging what that actually costs on her end. And I think that is an important part of the conversation going forward. She also has a really incredible intro to a story that I think it's just someday it will be a movie. I'm completely convinced it will be a movie. So with all that being said, enjoy. Hello and welcome to the And Both podcast. Here we are going to hear from moms and those in motherhood that are doing the thing that works for them. They are honoring themselves alongside the all-encompassing role and level of expectation that is motherhood. And we are going to hear from as many different people as possible in their own experience, so you can find people to relate to. You can hear stories that will make you laugh, make you cry, all of the above, and that we will come together as a community to support one another in a way that is holistic and honoring of the woman and the mother as a whole. Hello and welcome back to the And Both podcast. I am here today with Jenny Armstrong, who has a resume, I believe, as long as my arm, but I will let you pick and choose what you want to put out there. So first of all, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I always say it's so fun when you get to see the person whose voice is usually in your ears. So always a fun experience. So like Ashley said, my name is Jenny and I wear a few hats. I am a state representative in Alaska. I am the CEO of a consulting firm and creative agency that launches social good initiatives. And then along the way, I launched another company that helps other female consultants like me through feminine leadership coaching, courses for launching your brand and business, and implementing systems and structure so you can scale. I am also a mom, so I have an 8-year-old stepdaughter and a 3-year-old son, and I have been an informal guardian to 2 teenage girls for almost 3 years now, which is hard to believe. And yeah, as I mentioned, I am coming to you live from my husband's childhood home bathroom because it is the only place where I could make sure there was no kids in the background.
Oh my gosh. I know. It's so like doing this stuff. It's one of those things where you realize like you can be, I think sometimes like when I started the podcast, I was always so nervous to like record things or whatever. And then, it's like, I want to have the audacity of a child, right? Like my kid comes in like naked, not a stitch of clothing on. They're like, "Hey mom, how's it going?" And I'm like, I want like a thread, just a little tiny shred of what you've got going on there, because that's epic.
It's amazing. I mean, they are watching Big Hero 6, eating bacon and running around in their underwear, getting ready to go to their park. So it's like a good summer life right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and when is it inappropriate for that to continue on? Like running around your
I
underwear
know.
eating bacon doesn't sound terrible.
Why did we have to stop doing that? Oh no, I'm adding this to my 2024 bucket list now.
There you go. I know you got months. You have months left to go. So gotta get on that. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it's so funny. So you're up in Alaska. How you did not start in Alaska, did you?
I did not start in Alaska. I have been here for just over 5 years now. And I found my way here because a friend from grad school moved to Alaska. And we were on a FaceTime call doing like goal accountability buddy stuff. And he's like, "I have an idea." And he went and got my now husband and brought him into the frame on FaceTime. And on that call, his name is Ben. He invited me to road trip Alaska with him, made a PowerPoint for that road trip. I came and I never left. And so that was just over 5 years ago, and we have lived a lot of life since then.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Was it the PowerPoint or was it the road trip or what was the yes? Because that's a really stacked deck.
Yeah, I mean, PowerPoints are a big love language around here, so I was highly impressed. And a friend at the time, I forwarded her the PowerPoint, and I haven't even met him in person yet. And she was just like, "Marry him," and I did. But yeah, Alaska is magical. I mean, it was pretty much immediate love with my husband. So it was a big whirlwind. We're both very intense people, so I don't think it surprised anyone. And I was able to effectively move here so easily because I had spent 4 years traveling and building my business. So I was like, well, I just have this suitcase. So
Yeah.
pretty easy to stick around. Yeah.
That's amazing though. Cause then it's not like, I feel like every movie, rom-com, whatever that gets put out there is like, you have this whole life and you've got like a house and furniture and friends and all this stuff. And like, it's like, that's the big thing. That's the big hurdle. Right. But like, you like traveled and did all of those pieces. So it's like, no, I'm free. I'm ready to go. It's like, I love that. I feel like that should be a new type of romantic movie. I don't want to say comedy, but
Totally. Yeah, I had all of those lovely things. I was living in DC with a long-term partner, and then at 26, we broke up, and I sold all my furniture, and I left my job, and I started my company. So I just did all of the things, and I was actually chatting with a woman yesterday, and we were talking about those like blow up your life moments and all of the amazing things that follow, and how that's such like a compelling storyline. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what Eat, Pray, Love was. Of like just massively stepping into the unknown and having no idea what's going to happen. So yeah, it's been quite an adventure.
That's amazing. I feel like that would be a very cool movie. It's like, I actually did not, I tried that whole like more traditional tract of life and then like bombed that thing and then ended up coming into like chapter 2 and it's going pretty swimmingly right now. So like, let's just keep like put that movie out there because that's the movie that people want to see, right? You want to see like when you jumped or you took the leap or all of that it all worked out.
My 20s would make a better movie just due to, I'm much more emotionally stable now, just like years of therapy and personal development will do that to you. So yeah, at 26, I was on the tail end of really trying to heal PTSD. And I mean, clearly I was just like young and fed up and just really went for it.
I love that. I do love that though, because I feel like there's so much of a message, especially in that time, like in the 26 range where people are like settling down and getting married and having kids and yada, yada. But if you only ever see that like on social media or in these movies or whatever, but then there's this one that comes along where you're like, oh wait, I don't have to because I hit some arbitrary number age. I can actually turn the corner and make a totally different decision.
Yeah. And I'm from the South. So ending a long-term relationship at 26 was like very old. It's like, what are you doing? Like that was your last chance. I think that that's kind of the feeling. So many of the women from my hometown, many of them got married and had kids very, very young. And I didn't meet Ben until I was 30. And then I got pregnant at 31 and had Jack at 32. So that's ancient in some corners of the US, but it was perfect timing for me.
Yeah, that's crazy. I got married at 22 and everybody thought I was getting married because I was pregnant, but no one would ask me. It was like the most, and then we were married for a long time before we had kids. But I just remember people being like, so wedding? And I'm like, yeah, wedding. And then like I went to school and he went to school. Like we got married and then carried on like doing all the things. So it's possible. You don't have to like take that trip just for that.
It's so important to have so many different visible paths of the way that things can go, because there is no one right way or one right time to get married or start a family or have kids. Like it just comes from that internal knowing. And I think shucking all external expectations, whether people think you're too old or too young or too this or too that, is so important, because it is truly the only path, I think, to happiness. You'll never be happy if you're following someone else's timeline or expectations.
Yeah. My favorite saying is everyone's opinion of you is none of your business.
Totally.
Like in that realm, I'm always like, yeah, no, like you do you and I'll do me. And like, I just don't hurt anybody. Don't hurt yourself and it'll be fine. We'll all just like carry on. But yeah, it's a weird space. I feel like 20 in your like mid to late 20s is a really hard time because you're supposed to have figured a bunch of stuff out. And you're like, I'm actually just older. I have money in the bank, kind of, and I don't really know basically anything more than I did 10 years ago, except I have more responsibilities. But now people are like, well, no, you should have figured this out. And you're like, eh.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't our prefrontal cortex not even fully form until we're 26?
Yeah. It's like
correctly. Yeah. You're still cooking. Like you're just getting started at 26 in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now like people live forever, right? So it's like, really, we should just extend out high school.
Totally.
Oh my God,
totally.
that would be awful. So how, in moving from DC, travel, all of that, to Alaska, how did you end up as a state rep? How did that transition go?
Yeah. So I've been an activist since college, and my company is launching social good initiatives, and I've always been really engaged in politics. And I swore that I would never run for office. I was like, I will engage in every way except running for office. And my son was 11 months old. It was May 2022. And if you remember, we had a formula shortage happening, and I was running around trying to find formula. And I was so lucky because he was pretty much just eating mostly solids, but it was still terrifying, like that. Your heart is dropping in your stomach because there's no formula on the shelves. And we had like a string of school shootings, and the Roe draft leaked that they were going to end constitutional protections for abortion. And I was so angry. I was like, we cannot even take care of the babies that we have, and we're going to do this. And so that all happened. And literally 24 hours later, I got asked to run for office, to run for the seat in my district. And I did a lot of soul searching. Politics is pretty low energy and terrible, but my husband is the one who really kind of convinced me, to go all in on it, because one of the big things is I grew up working class and very lucky to be in a position now with a lot more privilege. And so we just kept saying, like, our family motto is if you can, you must. And there's so many crises in our state. Like at the time I was running for office, I had been on a childcare wait list since Jack was born, and I would spend 18 months on that wait list. There was no other moms with an infant or a toddler in the entire legislature, in the House or Senate. And I felt strongly that, like, if I didn't do it, not a lot of moms have the privilege to be able to undertake this. You have to go to Juneau for 4 months. I commuted every single week. It's really intense. It takes a lot of privilege, just to be frank. So yeah, I went for it, and I really championed for paid family leave and childcare, mental health, violence against women. That was really my shtick. I was definitely like the mom in residence for sure. There are other moms and dads too with young families, but I spent most of my whole entire first session with my son still not in childcare, and my mother-in-law living with us, and my husband and her holding down the fort. So yeah, I really wanted to represent those families and give a voice to the kids and families that didn't have one in Juneau.
Yeah, that's amazing. Cause I think too, like so many times, like exactly what you're saying, people are like, I am like underwater here when it comes to like all of the things that are going on. I know this is wrong. I feel really strongly about this. And then there's this like element of not like it's always going to be this way, but like how can I be one person to make a difference in all of this? And so like being fed up enough. I feel like that's how it happens, right? It's like
Yeah.
fed up enough where it's like, okay, clearly no one else is coming along. I'm getting on this bus and we're just going to go to Juneau and we're going to go fix this because like this can't carry on in this way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really what drove me. I was totally fed up, and I knew I didn't have any grand illusions that I was going to change everything, but I thought that I could move the needle. And I feel I'm not running for reelection. It is so hard on a family. So for those who aren't familiar with Alaska, Juneau is our gorgeous state capital. Think Gilmore Girl vibes. It's like cute little town tucked into the mountains next to the ocean, surrounded by forests. But it's off the road system. You can only get there by plane or ferry. So I literally flew from Anchorage and Juneau. It's an hour and a half flight every single week for 4 months for 2 years.
That's bananas.
It is absolutely bananas. So it's really tough on families. There's a reason why there weren't any moms with young kids who are represented in the legislature right now, because it's almost impossible unless you have a really unique family setup. So my husband had sold his company in 2021, very flexible schedule, and my mother-in-law moved in with us. And so without those components, I never would have been able to run. There's just no way. So.
And then think about like how that plays out, right? Because like if it's not a possibility unless you have sort of like all the cards line up, like you say, then you don't have women in the legislature. You don't have moms in the legislature. So the people that are there, it's like this group think of, everyone who looks the same, has the same experience, all of that stuff. So that's why things just carry on in that same kind of track.
Yep, 100%. I mean, the laws that come out of a body are going to represent that body. And so when you have a more diverse group of people with different lived experiences, you're going to have more diverse bills that support a larger group of people and can be truly representative.
That's awesome. I think that's really amazing to I can't believe that the state capitol, there's no road to the state capitol. Like I kind of got stuck there a little bit. Like I mean, I don't know Alaska very well, but that's nuts. Like you can't get in your car and drive to the state capitol.
You cannot. Yeah. There is a push for it to move to Anchorage, which is our largest urban center, but I'm not sure that will happen. It would pretty much decimate the Juneau economy. But yeah, it's crazy. We're a really unique state. It's kind of like going to summer camp for 4 months because there's tons of communities that are off the road system. I mean, Alaska geographically is ginormous when you put it on top of the map of the US. I forgot how many Texases you can fit inside Alaska. It's like 2 or 3 or something. I should know that. Yeah, we're a huge, huge state and we have such geographic sprawl. So everyone basically packs up for 4 months like a summer camp and moves to the capital. And you're like in this fishbowl for 4 months, trying to pass somewhere between an $11 billion budget, serving on your committees, trying to solve all these crises, trying to pass laws. So it's really intense. But the nice thing is the rest of the year, you're home and you're just focused on your constituents. So makes it a little bit more doable. You can have a job outside of that. But yeah, for those 4 months, I basically would wake up at 5 or 6 a.m. every day, work on my company for a few hours, touch base with my team, go to the Capitol and work all day. And then I would just come home and go to sleep. Like there was just not space for anything else. I knew that I would burn out and that I would just have to put aside a lot of other things. The only thing I maintained was my Duolingo streak. That was it. It was like Duolingo, sleep, no alcohol, and just keeping my company going and doing the best I could in the legislature. So it was a wild ride. I'm really grateful for the experience. And I'm also very excited for the next chapter in January when I get to pass the baton to someone else.
Yeah. What did you do at the end of that 4 months? Did you just like face plant in your doorway? Like, just like, see ya. Thank you very much. I need to have a nap now.
Yeah, it takes a long time to recover after each session. It just feels very disorienting because my husband was kind of joking. I just kept being so amazed. I was like, wow, I can cook my own breakfast and have exactly what I want to eat when I want to eat it. And I'm on my own schedule. Like for 4 months, you're just eating at the Capitol, whatever's being served in the lounge. Like you kind of lose a lot of control of your time. You can be on the floor for 8 hours. You could be on the floor till midnight. Like you just can't have plans. And so having time freedom again was huge. And then pretty much a week after session, we took the kids to Legoland and to New Orleans. And that was an amazing way to celebrate. And at the end of session, I just kept focusing and visualizing. I was like, I will be with my kids. We will be in New Orleans. We will be in Legoland. It's coming.
Yeah, you need time to like be able to not be beholden. And that's, I think too, like another part that's really hard is like, what if you're in a space where like that doesn't happen? Like what if there is no end to that? And I always and that comes with things that you are actively working to help with, like people that don't have childcare because there's no childcare available. It's that juggle of work, but there's no session. Like it's it's forever until, they go to school or whatever.
It's impossible. We have so many families who are struggling. And one of my big things I always try to talk about is that childcare is not a mommy issue. It is an economic issue. And so I tried to frame, I worked a lot on like LGBTQ equality and all these other things, and paid family leave, bringing paid family leave insurance was one of my major projects when I was serving, or I'm still serving. But anyway, I just kept trying to tie it back to the economy because I'm like, I don't know that the emotional appeal is going to get me very far. I'm a progressive and a red state. I'm in the minority. And so I'm like, the numbers don't lie. We can look at other countries and other places and see the outcome of investing in families and children. And it's just in every single area, it's going to have a positive impact, because when you don't have enough sufficient childcare, people still have to work and they end up putting their kids in unsafe situations, and it perpetuates abuse, and that increases ACEs scores, which increases the need for support when they get to K through 12 education. Like the trickle down effects of not having good investment in early childhood is so immense. And it's such a no-brain investment to me to invest in those early years, especially if you are pro-family and you are pro-life. I'm not trying to make any of this about politics. I realize we're wading deep into some sensitive topics here, but whatever your view, I think all of us can agree we want the same things. We want healthy, happy families. And so, that was just a really big thing that I tried to focus on, was how important it is to invest in families and what the outcomes of that can look like.
Yeah, I was at a conference in May, and it was all about care tech. So people that are developing technology around caregiving for everything. And the care economy is a $648 billion market just related to care. The impact is in the trillions in terms of like on our GDP, and the trickle down into the other parts of the economy that people talk about, or that people like try and separate from care. If you can't go to work, you can't earn a living, you can't pay for things, you can't pay taxes, you can't do all of that stuff, but you can't go to work and leave your kid like hanging out at home with a can opener. Mm-hmm. It's just like that. I still am so baffled by people talking about, when they talk about caregiving, and they talk about it as a like, women should be home raising kids, so we don't need to invest in care because we already have these people to do it. I mean, this is not my opinion. Like, holy cow, let's put some like bells and whistles and big flashing lights around that. Like that stuff gets going, and I'm like, time to turn off the TV and go to bed, or I'll never sleep because I'll just like be this giant flaming ball of rage. It's not a woman's problem. It's a family's problem. And that is, however your family is made up, you need to take care of these people.
Yeah, 100%. And there's so many different ways that families are formed and the way that they look like. And yeah, it's not this outdated 1950s model of a heterosexual couple conceiving naturally. There's so many, especially in Alaska, so many beautiful ways that families exist and shapes that they take. And we need to provide blanket support across the board. So I'm with you 100%.
Yeah. I do like how a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing now come out when they talk about care and talk about paid family leave and stuff like that. A lot of it is framed more as a caregiving perspective versus a parenthood perspective, because I think that is something that has been that self-limiting factor for a lot of people in being able to bridge the gap in their imagination. Talking about people that are taking care of aging parents while trying to find childcare for their kids, people that are, families that are unable to outsource long-term care in a economically feasible way. So it's that, I think it's sort of that idea of like the tornado of childcare is pulling in elder care, and it's pulling in all these different aspects of caregiving, which unfortunately means the awareness of the problem is bigger, and hopefully we get to some sort of meaningful resolution or plan faster. However, we're right now in the thick of the not greatness.
Yeah, I'm so glad you touched on that because it was a huge thing I did education around. I was obviously biased to thinking about newborn, but adoption, fostering, having a child who gets sick, having you, if you have like some kind of medical emergency, and then taking care of elders, all of that is covered under, like a broad paid family leave plan or insurance plan. And so, yeah, it was really helpful because a lot of people, their eyes kind of glaze over. They're like, I'm done with having kids. I'm not super interested in this. But then you explain to them all the ways that it can benefit them. And it's like, oh, and then, in addition to a childcare crisis, I know not just in Alaska, but across the country, we're also seeing an elder care crisis, right? We just don't have enough of that, of workers who are, and yeah, there's just a shortage there. And so it's something where we can really fix this on both ends.
Yeah. And it's unfortunately one of those things too, where it took a global pandemic for people to be like, oh, wait a minute. When people started pulling their parents and grandparents out of assisted living facilities because that was where people were not surviving in such a high percentage, it's that idea of like, you may know intuitively that this is not the ideal. However, you're trying to raise your own family, you're trying to work, you're trying to do all that. I mean, 60% of families in this country cannot afford to live on one income alone. People need to work. Both people need to work in order to have financial stability. Then you get into that chicken or egg conversation about if you're going to work for financial stability, but it's costing in the state of Massachusetts. I don't live in Massachusetts, but its average is $60,000 a year per child for daycare. Like how? You know what I mean? And then that's when people pull in that argument of like, if you're a woman and you make $60,000 a year and you have 2 kids, then there's really no point in you working. And you're like, well, but you don't pay into Social Security, you don't pay into all these programs. And so the impact is, I think, what's the statistic, like $500,000 over your career that you end up losing out on if you leave the workforce to raise children. Oh, it's bananas.
It's totally bananas. Yeah, I'm with you.
That's what I'm going to call this episode. It's bananas. It's just absolutely. Oh my gosh. So tell me about the work that you do for you. So you work with helping businesses to grow in social impact, you said?
Yeah. So Delve is my consulting company and creative agency, and we're a little unique because we bring issue area expertise. So me with a policy background, international development, and nonprofit. We're not just a design agency making beautiful animations and websites and brands and everything that goes under that. We bring a really strong strategic lens, and we're experts at the launch stage. So we've launched, affordable housing projects all across California and in some other states. So working with, local governments, we work with foundations, we work with nonprofits, anything that is social impact oriented. We work with a social impact tech startup that's trying to change grant making. So we do a ton of holistic strategic comms and program development support there. And then it's been amazing. I've been doing that for 8 years. And along the way, I was meeting so many other consultants like myself who were mission driven and in this space. They were like, can you do for us what you do for them? And so I started launching brands and websites and doing the same comprehensive support for female-led consultants, solopreneurs, and firms. And then now that's evolving where kind of reaching more and more women who aren't like, I have some clients who are very large firms, like very well, like large firms, very established, former Hyatt White House folks. But then I also have a lot of people who are just a solo consultant, maybe just finished their PhD and they don't necessarily need a giant high ticket package. And so I spent years kind of beta testing some like this website template that was specifically designed for mission driven consultants. And yeah, I created a program called the Legacy Collective. You can launch your brand and website in 30 days. It's got a community aspect. My next program is called Consultant Catalyst. It's like plug and play all of the systems and operations. It's like all of our swipe files from running a consulting firm. And then really been getting into a lot of deep feminine leadership work. So planning to expand my coaching next month, actually, around that. And just how do we talk about feminine leadership with a progressive lens? What does that look like? I feel very passionately that those of us who have become entrepreneurs, man or woman, we don't do it to just recreate the same box that we came from. Most of these boxes are made up. They're toxic. They're not really rooted in our values. And so what does it look like to completely reimagine the way that you structure work, the way that you structure your teams, how you engage with clients? How do we take a lot of those like shadow aspects, like lack of boundaries and people pleasing and kind of flip that on its head and like trust our intuition, understand that work happens in cycles and seasons. So I'm really excited to be talking a little bit more about that because there's like a lot of conversations around that happening in different communities that I'm in. And I wanted to find a way to be more vocal. So yeah, I'm creating some feminine leadership archetypes right now that I'm very excited about. I'm deep in like Jungian archetypes and studying a lot of different things, but yeah, that's what I'm up to. And it's been really fun because just jumping back to session really quick, you don't have any space for creativity. I didn't have space to write. And as soon as session ended, it was like this explosion of creativity and energy came forth. And I was just so excited to dive into all the next things that I wanted to create. I've kind of pushed up my timeline for my launches because you just know how it is when you're in a state of flow, something that might have taken you 4 hours on a day when you're feeling a little tired, you can like knock out in 1 hour. So
Yeah.
I just have a lot of summer energy right now.
I love that. I love the idea. I always kind of bring it back to like when you have a newborn and there's like that sort of like hibernating type space, and not necessarily like, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever. But like when your attention is so focused in one direction, you get really tunnel visioned about that. And like, I do think that there is so much space in those moments where you can't focus on everything and you focus on one thing. I feel like your brain filters out the stuff that maybe sort of like clogs up the treadmill. And I just remember like when my kids were little, like brand new babies, being like, I'd go into having a new baby and have this idea about like what I was going to do after. And then there's that transition period. Everything just sort of like slows down. You get super tunneled. And then I'd come out and be like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to do that anymore. But like, it's like chapter closed, ready to go. And I love that creative explosion that comes after that.
Yeah. Something else that happened for me is when my son turned 2, it was like a switch flipped in my mind. Like I was like, oh, hello. I was like meeting myself again. For me, it kind of extended beyond just the newborn years. It was kind of this full 2-year period when all of a sudden I really felt embodied again. I felt like myself. I had a lot more things bubbling out. So it was definitely like it wasn't just an on or off thing, because obviously those newborn months are the most intense in tunnel vision. But really at 2 years, I was like, wow, I just kind of felt like I was fully coming back home to myself. And it's an amazing feeling. Yeah.
I love that. I read somewhere that they think that postpartum is actually 7 years. They think that the like to truly go where everything kind of gets into its new space and place in your life, cognitively, physiologically, all of that it actually takes like 6 or 7 years. And I agree.
Oh my gosh. I believe it. Yeah. I'm 3 years postpartum and I'm still working on this pelvic floor. Like it's a journey.
Oh my God.
It's a total journey. The pelvic floor.
I feel like that's like the pelvic floor is one of the things where no one really talks about it. You can read about it on like social media, and your like midwife or doctor, whatever, will like talk to you about it. But it's not until you've had a baby and you're in a group of other moms where someone says pelvic floor, and then all of a sudden everyone is like, we need to talk because I have thoughts about that now. Like this thing that was over there is now like a part of life. Cracks me up.
How come for the first 30 years of my life, I don't think I ever even heard the word pelvic floor? Like it was never discussed. And I would have really done so much differently. I think part of prenatal prep should be like pelvic floor therapy, understanding your pelvic floor, strengthening it. I had a labor that was 61 hours and I pushed for 3.5 hours with a baby who had a head in the 99th percentile. And I mean, that is why the pelvic floor is still a journey. Yeah. And I'm like, why aren't we talking about this more? And also, why isn't it covered? Like just going back to the way we invest in families and, birthing moms, like why isn't pelvic floor therapy something that is automatically covered? Because when you end up having problems with your pelvic floor, it can cost insurance companies and you so much longer term versus if you did some preventative work. So just another thing we need to fix.
Well, I think too, yeah, like that's that idea, right? Of like the sacrificial aspect of motherhood is like, you go in and you've got to like for your pregnancy, you've got to pretend that like nothing's happening and you got to like be productive and get ready and prepare and like nest and all of that junk, right? And then you have the baby and it is a lot. It's a lot that goes on, like long labor, short labor, all of those things. It's a lot. I left people when they're like, I had a really traumatic delivery. And I'm like, which one is not? Like, I want to understand how someone would classify a human being exiting your body as non-traumatic. A whole grown human being was in your body and now it's out of your body. There's trauma. It doesn't have to be like there is medical trauma. I think there can be like emotional trauma around like not being able to have choice over how those things happen. But like, let's just call it what it is. It's trauma. And I just like, I'm like, okay, so that happened, right? But then the baby's born and everyone's like, how's the baby? And you're like, again, pelvic floor. Want to talk about my pelvic floor? And they're like, no, I want to know if you have a good baby, if they're sleeping. And you're like, listen, I don't have a whole lot of control over things that I didn't even know I needed to have control over. And I really want to talk about that because that's front of mind. If people are like, you can't nurse in public. And you're like, listen, I don't care what I do in public anymore.
Yeah, I know. I could not care less. I'm like, yeah, why isn't anyone asking me at cocktail parties how it went at the jumping place? I'm like, my pelvic floor therapy must be going good. I could go to the jumping place and not pee my pants. So that's an improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
It's a journey. I agree. It's this huge experience, life-altering experience, and we're so kind of casual about it. And I do think it's something that requires so much processing and community. And I don't know, it just feels like it's getting harder. Like even as we have more money and more access and more advancements, it feels like parenting is becoming harder and more isolating in so many ways. Mm-hmm. And I do attribute so much of that to social media. I had to delete Instagram for a really long time. I actually just re-downloaded it this week because I was like, I'm going to go crazy. I can't look at these videos and photos and of all these other families and these influencers and compare. Like as much as I don't want to do that, you can't help yourself. I was like, I need to just completely block this out and like stay in my lane. And it was amazing what happened when I got off. I was like, wow, I don't have this like voice in the back of my head of what I should or shouldn't be doing or thinking about, how that other family's kitchen looks or whatever it may be. And you're already so sensitive in that period postpartum that, I think social media just puts you in such a vulnerable state. So I had to back out of that for a while.
I think that's smart. Because I think I agree. Like, I think that what's happening, if I had to like label it, I think that's what is happening is that it's this idea, right? Like people don't talk about pelvic floor because that's like a thing that feels very personal. So where do they go? They go to the internet because the internet like knows all, right? And so they go to the internet and then you end up with like someone who just had a baby like 46 minutes ago who's doing like back handsprings and they're like, it's fine. It's just all in your mindset. And you're just like, what? Like, what is happening? How is this life? And how is this okay? Like, it's just so unregulated and unrealistic. But all that does is like, if you're the mom who's sitting in your room at 2:00 in the morning and you're looking at this stuff because you're trying to stay awake because you haven't slept and all of this. And now all of a sudden, this is like the information that you get fed. It's what makes the walls taller between you and other people. It's what makes people like move farther away. Although it's like we're all walking down the same road together, but there's just these walls in between and we're all just trying to stay in our lane for no purpose other than we're supposed to. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, to go with your analogy of this being like a trauma, imagine any other trauma, whether it's sexual assault or a car accident or anything. And imagine if you went through that and then you opened your social media and all you saw were people who had just been sexually assaulted or gone through a car accident and all the different ways they're reacting and living and the disparity and the treatments that they're getting and the responses. That is what we're doing with mothering and parenting. We have this insane, incredible experience. And then we are immediately bombarded with a million different views of how it could have been different and how someone's doing it better than you. And it's just totally unrealistic and unfair because you wouldn't tolerate that with anything else. So yeah, I'm totally with you.
Yeah. I think it's so weird. It's just so weird. This idea of like you, like You should know what you're doing because you are a birthing person. You have no idea what you're doing, but you don't know who to ask because if you ask, then you must be doing it wrong. So then you just kind of figure it out. And then there's just like, again, more space and less community until there's somebody who, like, it would be me in all honesty in life, who's the person who rolls up to the playground and just sort of like, oh my God, can you believe this? Blah, blah, blah. And then people look at you like you're nuts. And you're like, well, I haven't talked to an adult for a long time. That wasn't my husband. And all we talk about is feeding and changing and like, is this a rash? And like, whatever. Like, you're the first human I've interacted with that's not like the person at the post office. So here it is.
Yeah, 100%. Oh my gosh. I think I had my son in 2021, which COVID was a different experience in Alaska, but I really have like a sense of grief of missing out on like prenatal yoga. Like that wasn't really a thing during my pregnancy and different things that are, can bring you together in community with other birthing people who are having kids at the same time as you. And yeah. And I think that to your point, like if you have that, you can have these outlets that just aren't your husband or your partner. You can have those other conversations with women. And yeah, I also think it's important to just have people to talk to about things that aren't related to the kids, you know, like just again, reclaiming that sense of identity and whatever that looks like. So I think that if I could go back, I would have tried to engage in other types of community, like whether it's my entrepreneurship communities. But to your point, you just kind of go total tunnel vision. Yeah, there was something else you said that reminded me the few days before I gave birth, I did a meet and greet with our pediatrician. And I remember being so worked up. I was like crying and so emotional because I was like trying to get answers. And I was like, but I don't know what I don't know. And I just remember feeling suddenly very scared and unprepared. And I just was in like a state of like panic for a moment where I was like, I just need you to tell me things. I was almost like, please just give me a manual. Like, can't you just tell me exactly what to do and what to expect when the baby comes? And of course that doesn't exist. And as soon as the baby's in your arms, you're like, oh, I intuitively understand. This all makes sense. You realize you don't need to know everything about having kids from ages 0 to 18 all at once. You can learn as you go. That was like a huge ridiculous aha moment I had where I'm like, oh, I don't need to know everything at once. I can read about week 1 when I'm in week 1 and week 2 when I'm in week 2. But I remember having this worry of like, I'm not prepared enough. I don't know enough. But of course we know everything. It's all inside of us.
Yeah. I was too much of an academic going into parenthood that I knew that if I started to read the books, I would read all the books. And so I read no books. Just a completely opposite direction. And we went into our first pediatrician appointment. He was like, I'm sure you've read all the books. And I was like, I have not read all the books because there's too many books. So like, you just tell me, pediatrician guy, what I need to read and I'll read that. But like, you weren't going to take my call until I had a baby because then it would just be some random lady. But since I'm here, could you give me like a quick book report and I'll just Amazon this and we're good. But like, I mean, they don't do anything. They just lay there.
Yeah.
Right.
I was very similar to you. I only read Emily Oster's Expecting Better. And is it Ina May? The positive childbirth stories. I was like, I cannot read any books. I don't want to take in any information because I knew like you, I would go overboard. But then I think for a moment that was when I kind of panicked at the end because I was like, wait, should I have read every book? Should I have written a thesis about parenting? Did I mess up here?
Have I already messed it up and I haven't even started yet? Did I already fail this class?
I know I've already failed. I was like, I went in a totally opposite direction. I was like, I'm not going to take in any information. The only thing, the best advice that I got was 2 things, which is don't take advice from anyone because everybody is different. So like, don't like listen when someone says, oh, you have to use this swaddling technique or whatever it is. And the other best thing I ever heard about parenting, and I've passed this on to so many other parents who've said that it still sticks with them, is that everything good and bad doesn't last more than 2 weeks. And I am so glad that I heard that because I didn't realize how quickly newborns change. And so all the cute, precious things that they do, 2 weeks later, it's gone. They've already discovered their hands. So they're not magically discovering them anymore. And then, when you get to things like sleep regressions, which is torture because you're used to sleeping 8 hours and now they won't sleep again. I was like, I just would be by the bed, by the crib, holding my son's hand. And I'm like, 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, I'll be sleeping again. And it like keeps you going, just like that
Mm-hmm.
2-week rule, even though it's not exactly always 2 weeks. Sometimes it's a few days, sometimes it's 3 weeks, but that always helped me to remember nothing is static. So be grateful for the moments you have that are precious and lovely and fun. And then when things are hard, know that it's not going to be that way forever.
Yeah. I go with the one was yesterday was the easiest day, no matter what, right? Like you're here today. Yesterday was the easiest day. And yeah, like even if it wasn't, even if whatever, like you made it through and you're on to the next. And the other was somebody wrote in a card before my first was born, said, you're the best parent this baby has ever had. And I was like, okay, all right, you can stick. I'll carry that around. So I write that in the cards for other people. But it's like, and that the idea of like so much variation is so important because, when you get into that like group think idea and it's like my baby is this many weeks old and they do this and your baby is this many weeks old and they don't do this yet. It's all a range. It's all like
Yep.
some are early, some are late, some, whatever. But yeah, so when you had your son, this was my question that I was trying to hold on to. When you had your son, then your stepdaughter was like 5, you said?
She was 4, about to turn
4.
5. Yeah.
Okay.
So she was a month away from being 5, basically.
And then you had 2 other kids in the house.
Yeah. So not that summer, but when my son turned 4 months old in October 2021, I had helped a friend escape Afghanistan. It's a story for another day.
There's another movie.
It was an absolutely wild experience, but it was a friend I had met in DC. He was like a leader on a lot of feminist issues, and he had started an accelerator for entrepreneurs in Kabul. He was amazing. And I met him in DC when he was like receiving a prestigious award from the State Department, and he was being targeted by the Taliban. And long story, I ended up like embedded in these like Telegram chats with all these like, ex-military and diplomats and government folks who were all working on like saving all the documents for folks being targeted by the Taliban who were trying to get out of Afghanistan. So anyway, I ended up being the perfect person for that because Jack was 4 months old. I'm up every couple hours nursing. So I could be on like around the clock effectively for different time zones. It was a very, very intense week. I won't get into everything that happened, but by the end of that week, I needed to step back from it because it was becoming too much. And I kind of put it out there. I was like, I would love to find a way to help locally. We have a lot of refugees in Alaska. And an Alaska Twitter friend posted about a family who like they'd spent time in Alaska. It was 6 kids and 2 parents. And they were also escaping the Taliban to come back here. And I was like, hey, do they need a place to stay, like to get on their feet when they come? And the house my husband and I bought we wanted to do emergency housing. And it has like 2 master suites and multiple levels. And like one level's like its own ranch style world. And yeah, we thought they might come for a few days or a week or 2, and they stayed for 3 months. So it was an amazing, lively time with a house of like 12 or 13 of us. And then, yeah, so the 2 oldest girls, they had never been to school. They did not speak English. Had never seen a map. They didn't know what the moon was. They couldn't count. And so my husband and I sat down with my stepdaughter's kindergarten workbooks and a Google Translate, and we started teaching them with kindergarten level. And they both entered school at 7th and 9th grade. And when the family moved out in December, the girls stayed with us during the school year, almost like a 70-30. So they would come over on Sunday night and then leave Friday after school and spend the weekends with their family. Well, we did that for 2 years. And then this past year, their family moved into their like permanent housing. So the girls are now with us every day after school until dinner time. And then they go home and sleep in there with their family and see their family for dinner and in the evening. So we're their like education guardians. Like I go to their parent teacher conferences and we oversee a lot of that care along with a village of other people. But just for like some like a inspirational way to end that is those 2 girls are on the honor roll. They're top of their class, preparing for college, super involved in all these activities like leaders in trio, National Honor Society. The oldest, who is going into her senior year now, is preparing to go to nursing school. She wants to become a nurse midwife and eventually an OBGYN, go back to Afghanistan, open a hospital for women. Like it is unbelievable to see that transformation. And the 4 youngest we knew would be totally fine because even though they hadn't been to school, like the youngest was 3. And we were right. Like they learned so quickly. Elementary, it's so easy to get caught up. But when you're entering 7th and 9th grade, you don't speak English and you've never been to school. they were the only ones in their programs who had never had schooling. The others had schooling in their language. So it's something I'm just so proud of them. And yeah, they're like family. Like Jack considers them sisters. They've just grown up with him since he was 4 months old. And yeah, it's been very special. So I feel very lucky to have them in our lives, and it's been an amazing experience.
Well, I mean, if there was ever a story that was more perfect for why we need education and why we should educate girls and make sure that these programs in countries that are trying to take education away from girls and women, I don't know what it is. Because, right, so here's the thing, right? So these girls, they don't go to school and they don't have any like opportunity or whatever. And then they have this opportunity to go and they learn and they do all of this stuff. And what do? They're going on to do things to help other people. It's like, why can't we invest in people that just want to do good things and they just want to take care of people? Like, I don't want ChatGPT to teach my kids how to do something. I want the resources and the care and the all of that in our world to go towards human to human, making humaning better and easier. That's amazing.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they had dreamed their whole lives of going to school. It was all that they had wanted to do. And so for them, it like continues to be emotional. Like they never take a moment for granted. Their counselors and teachers tell me every single time I see them that they are the hardest working and the kindest students that they know. And like one of the counselors was like, I think this is one of like Habiba, the oldest, was like, this is the hardest working student I think I've ever seen. She's so determined. She sends us emails with her life plans, her 10-year goals. Like she's so dedicated and her whole world is oriented around like breaking the cycle, getting educated, getting her career, and then figuring out how she's going to give back. Like that is what she lives and breathes all the time. And it is so amazing to see the two of them just like grow and blossom over these past 3 years. Yeah, it's been crazy.
That's amazing. And not only is she going to do all of these things, is that she wants to go back to and help other kids, other girls who wouldn't have the opportunity. And that to me, it's one thing to like get out and to be able to go to school and learn and grow and do all of that and go on to live a successful life. It's another thing to know exactly where you came from and all of those boundaries, and boundaries is not the right word. All of those like barriers, all of those barriers that you had to overcome in order to get to the place that you're at, to walk right back into that and say, no, like I knew this was wrong. I got a chance to do this, and now I'm going to turn around and give other people a chance to do that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, please invest in women and girls and education. And for anyone who's listening, like there are so many probably teen refugees in your own community. You know, if you can even just mentor once a week, help tutor, we've just been able to see what you can get so overwhelmed with wanting to help and fix things on a larger or more global scale. I mean, and I attempted to do that at a statewide scale in the legislature. And so I've kind of been there, but there's something about just zeroing in. It's like, I can't fix everything, but I have these 2 kids in front of me, and how can I give them everything I've got and invest in them? And I can already see how, you know, and it's not just us, there's neighbors and other people who've all kind of pitched in and sort of surround them and, you know, really invest in them. And it's like, these girls are going to do huge things. The ripple effects of that can be, you know, the magnitude is huge. So yeah, for whatever it's worth, there's like no act too small, and it really does go such a long way. And there's no one who's more grateful than someone who dreamed their whole life of wanting to go to school and then finally getting that chance.
That's amazing. That's like a whole mic drop story all on its own.
Yeah.
Like it's just, I love that. I love it so much because it's, you know, people say like, oh, we have to, you know, invest in the future and yada, yada. Like the future is in your living room doing its homework. Like you get to
totally
to be a witness to exactly the impact that people on these like policy levels are saying, this is what we need to do. Like you get to see the ground level changes that come from that.
Yeah, they were with me when I filed for my candidacy to run for office. They were with me on election night. They came to Juneau towards the end of session, and they got to be pages for a day, like work on the House floor. And I got to introduce them and tell the story. They got the loudest standing ovation. The whole room was crying, and they got to see all of these women in power. They got to see a female speaker of the House. And it was very emotional. I don't want to get emotional now, but it was just like so amazing to continue to see these experiences that they get and to show them that there's another way and another path. So yeah, it's been very special. Thanks for letting me share that story.
Oh my gosh. I wish that I had an enormous platform and some sort of like whatever to share that, because it's stuff like that. Those are the stories that need to be out in the world, not stories about people that are doing terrible things and getting away with it or, whatever. It's like people that are making a difference and people that are going to go on and make a difference. That's amazing.
Yeah.
My gosh. Well, so social impact seems to be very near and dear. I love what you're working on, because not only are you doing things that are like on the ground level, but you are doing what you can in a big way in a larger like policy level and sort of filling in the blanks along the way for women in entrepreneurship and leadership. So you really it's not like you're at the top and the bottom of the ladder. You've got every rung nailed down on the way there too, which is amazing.
Do what you can with what you've got.
Right.
That's my best advice. Not everybody can run for office. Not everyone can run a company or take in a family of 8, but just do what you can and give back what you can. There were so many people who helped me and my family when I was younger. I needed a surgery to basically save my eyesight, and the Lions Club paid for it. And there was a lot of different tough moments in my childhood where my grandmother and other people stepped in. And so for me, and my parents were epic volunteers, like volunteer of the year, volunteering at their church. And they just always showed me that what you have doesn't limit what you can give. And so just my experiences growing up and then being in the position I'm in now, at every stage, I've always just tried to do what I could. I couldn't always help in this way. And so if anyone out there has been sitting on the idea of running for office and you can, or getting more involved, or signing up to volunteer with your local refugee agency, if I can inspire any action around that, please just go for it. Follow that gut feeling.
That's awesome. Well, can you tell everybody how they can get in touch with you in all the different ways? Because I can't imagine that there wouldn't be people reaching out, because what you're working on is incredible.
Yeah, so I'm guessing this will be in the show notes, but I'm Jenny with an IE Armstrong. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. You can search Wild Awake, WILD, wildawakecreative.com, delforgood.com. So anything that I can do to support anyone out there, I am an open book, as is evidenced by this interview. I don't believe in gatekeeping. And so if there's any way that I can support anyone with anything related to business or social impact project or anything I can offer, I love to share and give freely. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ashley.